Hey there, kids. Welcome back to Sunday School. My name is Abigail, and I am a teacher here at Community Christian Church of Moore Park. And today we are going to be talking about the story when Jesus walked Feeling on water. Alone is a normal part of being a human being. Anytime we think that no one understands or how we feel, we can turn to God for comfort. He is always with us. Today we will learn about a time when Jesus' disciples felt very afraid because Jesus was not with them. Do you think they might have felt alone? So I think that they probably did feel very alone, and we're going to go ahead and watch the story of when Jesus walks on water.
Jesus had been teaching crowds of people by the Sea of Galilee. It was getting late, so he told his disciples to get into the boat and go to the other side of the sea. Jesus sent the crowds away and went up on the mountain to pray by himself. That evening, the boat was far from the shore. The wind blew and the waves tossed the boat around. Jesus was still on the mountain alone. Around 3 a.m, Jesus came toward his disciples walking on the sea. When the disciples saw Jesus, they were terrified. "It's a ghost!" they cried. Right away, Jesus spoke to them. "Have courage! It's me! Do not be afraid." Peter answered, "Lord, if it really is you, tell me to come to you on the water." So Jesus said, "Come." Peter got out of the boat and started walking on the water toward Jesus. But when Peter saw how strongly the wind was blowing, he was afraid. Peter began to sink. "Lord, save me!" he cried. Jesus reached out his hand and grabbed Peter. Jesus said, "You have little faith. Why do you doubt?" They got into the boat and the wind stopped. Then everyone in the boat worshiped Jesus and said, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Jesus proved that he can be trusted. His miracles, teaching, death, and resurrection showed that he is who he says he is. Only Jesus can save us when we look to him in faith.
So I have a couple of questions for you guys. My first one being, how was Peter able to walk on water? So if Peter was just on his own and he was trying to trust in his own strength, he would not be able to walk on water. But because he had faith in God and because he trusted Jesus fully, he was able to walk on water because he had faith. As soon as Peter started looking to himself, that's when he began to stumble, and that's when he began to fall. My next question is there anything we cannot do with God's power? God's power is unlimited. We can do anything through Jesus, who gives us the strength and who is able to give us the power to be able to do the unthinkable. There are some things that we might not be able to do, and that's just because God hasn't granted it to us, like the ability to just fly or the ability to have super strength. So don't go home thinking like you're going to, jump off your couch and you're going to be able to fly, because most likely that's not going to happen. But Jesus does. He gives us the power. But when you accept Jesus into your heart, God lives inside of you, and so he is able to give you the power to do anything. All right, so for this science experiment, I'm using a bowl of water, and I'm going to test and see which objects float and which don't. This one, as you can tell, is a fork, and it does not float. It sinks right to the bottom of the bowl. Our next one is a pencil. We're going to see if this one will actually float. So I'm going to drop it in the water, and that one floats. So that one is good to go in it because it floats. The next one I'm going to try is a piece of paper. Now this paper will just start shriveling up inside the bowl, and that's what it keeps doing for most of the time while it's in there. So I got a little bit impatient, so I tried to make the sticky note sink by pushing it down and seeing if it got filled with water that it would sink. And then what I decided to do was crumble it up into a little tiny ball and see if I could get it to sink that way. Which it did at first. At first it started to sink, and then I tried to fill it up with water under the water. And after I did that, it sunk right to the bottom of the bowl. So the next one I tried was an apple, and with the apple, I was super surprised with the results. I thought that the apple would sink to the bottom of the bowl, but it didn't. It floated the whole time. Now I did an empty soda can, and this actually floated. But once you fill it up with water or fill it up with something, it will end up sinking to the bottom of the bowl, as you can tell. So, as you guys can tell, some of those objects had sunk to the bottom of the sink and some of them had actually floated. The difference here is with Jesus is that when Peter decided to trust in Jesus, he was able to float. He was able to walk on water. But when he didn't, he began to sink, just like some of the objects in here. All right, kids, so I'm going to go ahead and go through your guys' activity sheet things for today. So the first one that you guys have is a coloring page as usual. And you can see Peter here as he's beginning to sink, it looks like, and Jesus is trying to help him to be able to walk on water. On the back, you guys are going to circle the things that would float in water and circle the things that you think would end up sinking in the water. Kind of similar to the activity that we did just a little while ago where we tested out to see whether or not the objects that I put in my sink, whether they floated or whether they sunk. So the next one is we have our journaling page, and on the front we have our story, and you can share this story with a family member or a friend. And on the inside, on this first side right here, I'm going to kind of give you guys an example because I actually had to kind of think this through a little bit and try and figure out the project, but I think I figured it out. So, so what you guys are going to do, I'm going to give you guys the example right here. So you have the J, and then right here, it says B plus 3. So what you're going to do wherever it starts at in the alphabet. So for example, you're going to start at B and you're going to go C, D, E. For this one right here, you're going to go back 2. So you're going to start at the letter U and then go backwards 2. For R, the next one, you would go forward 1. You guys might want to get a picture of the alphabet just so that it might be a little bit easier so that you guys can subtract from wherever the letter it is that you start at. And then on the other side, it's a little bit easier, and you are just going to do a dot to dot of Jesus. The next thing that you guys have is a craft, which we can't remember if the craft is already done in your guys' bags or not, but I'm gonna just go ahead and show you what the final thing looks like. So you guys will have 2 circles. And you guys, I don't know if you guys are going to have to cut your circles out, but you guys also are going to have to ask for a parent's help to cut out the eyes because you're going to need the eyes here in a second. So you guys can go ahead and color this page. You guys can also color in all of these little squares here. And then what you guys are going to do is you guys are going to match up another thing, now that I'm remembering. You're also going to want to poke a hole in the middle of the page. You're going to poke a hole there as well. Then you're going to line up the holes and take your little pin here, and you guys are going to poke it through the hole like this. So it's poked through, and then on the back, you'll have it sticking out like this. Be careful because these are sharp and I don't want you guys to end up hurting yourselves. But then you guys are going to just bend each side so it looks like this. And then when you turn the page, I'm gonna go ahead and show you. So if you notice the little boy's eyes, he's not looking straight, and that's because he's scared. He's focusing on the dark. And this one, he is looks like he's looking to the side because he doesn't know anybody. And this one, he looks like he's being afraid because he's thinking that maybe the shot that he's about ready to get is going to hurt. And when he focuses straight, he will end up keeping his eyes on Jesus, which is what we all need to do. No matter what our circumstance is, no matter how scary it might be, we need to continue to keep our eyes on Jesus. So now we're going to go ahead and listen to the questions from kids from Pastor Brian. So let's go ahead and see what the questions from kids has to say.
Hi there, I'm Pastor Brian, and it's time for Questions from Kids. Julia from East Orange, New Jersey asks,
how can I have a stronger faith?
Oh, Julia, that is a question we all need to keep asking ourselves. Great question. So here's the thing. We know that faith needs to be grown. It's kind of like a muscle. Some people have called it a muscle that you have to keep exercising and stretching it so it grows and becomes stronger. And so how do we do that? Well, there are a few ways that we can do that. The first one I can think of is by spending more time in the Bible. The more we read the Bible, the more we study it, the more we understand who God is, the way He works, the greater confidence we have in Him. We know how we're to live. And so reading the Bible is perhaps one of the greatest ways you can grow in your faith. Other ways are prayer, talking with God, asking Him to grow you, asking Him to help you learn and to live on faith. Another way is by worshiping, being part of a church. This is why it's so important that we're part of a family of faith and we gather regularly and worship together and study together and talk through these things, learn from one another. But all these things lead us to this one idea that I think is really important you hear. You have to stretch your faith. You have to put yourself in positions that are uncomfortable at times to grow in that faith. Think again about muscles. Think about, lifting weights. Lifting weights is not easy. You have to strain and stretch yourself and you add more weight and there are times you're like, I don't know if I can do this, but you keep pushing. And it's through that exertion that your muscles grow stronger. If you never put weights on the barbell and just lifted an empty barbell, you're not gonna really gain muscle. So it's the same thing with our faith. If we're never stretching ourselves, if we're never stepping into those uncomfortable areas of life, if we're never sitting down with that person in the cafeteria and praying that God opens a conversation to talk about your faith with him or her, then you're not gonna grow as much. It's through those uncomfortable, stretching moments that we really grow. So I wanna encourage you to do that. Share your faith with other people. Go on mission trips. Live for Christ day by day, and you will see your faith grow by leaps and bounds, I believe, when you do that. So I hope that has been helpful, and again, that's something that we all need to be doing. So question back for you, who or what are you looking to be secure? Where is your faith found?
So now we're going to go ahead and listen to our last video here, and it is about a missionary. And so now we're going to go ahead and listen to our missions video. I'm so excited to watch this. Let's go ahead and watch it, guys.
Whether cruising down highways in some of the world's largest cities or bumping along dirt roads to get to hard-to-reach villages, a missionary's daily commute can look very different from typical transportation in America. Here are some of the ways missionaries get around the world. Boats. In the Amazon jungle, dugout canoes facilitate trade and maintain communication between villages and cities. One journey can last 3 days or 3 weeks. Nevertheless, it is the only mode of transportation to further the gospel, said a missionary in Brazil. Metros. Light rail is commonplace in commutes for missionaries in the world's megacities. Metros are usually crowded, so riding the metro can be an exercise in letting go of personal space. Trains! In some locations, people spend days on the train to reach their destination. As missionaries roll across the countryside, children play with newfound friends, people swap stories, and the conductor sells ice cream. In India, the railroad is one of the country's most efficient modes of transportation. Cars. Cars are popular among the middle and upper class in South Asia, but there are a few major differences when driving a car in these countries. Missionaries must master the skill of driving on the left side of the road. Some roads are full of ruts and potholes. During the rainy season, some villages are completely inaccessible for months at a time. Without a four-wheel drive vehicle, said a missionary in Southeast Asia. Buses. Until recently, owning a car was too expensive for most East Asians. For the lower and middle classes, buses are affordable and accessible. In Kenya, matatus are brightly colored buses or vans operated by private owners. These vehicles are decorated with bright colors and unique decorations to get the attention of potential customers. Trucks. Trucks are a common sight in sub-Saharan and North Africa. Some missionaries serve where seatbelts are only a suggestion, and riding in the back of a truck with 14 of your closest friends is an acceptable mode of transportation. Motorbikes. Motorbikes are a useful and inexpensive means of transportation. According to a worker in South Asia, motorbike drivers go anywhere on the road they want, sidewalks, ditches, and in between cars. Another worker in Southeast Asia confessed, "Seeing multiple people on a scooter at once always makes me smile." Bicycles. Missionaries often have the opportunity to learn to balance groceries and sometimes kids as they ride through some of the biggest biking cities in the world. Missionaries in Europe say that as a result of biking, they've had conversations with other cyclists, and there has almost always been a chance to talk about Jesus. Animals. Some missionaries work with people who use more lively forms of transport, like donkeys or camels. Camels were created to survive with little water and food, making them a great choice in rugged, dry terrain, even if they do spit sometimes. Donkey carts can still be seen in many sub-Saharan African, Central Asian, and European villages. No matter the transportation, missionaries all over the world pray that God will place people in the seat next to them who need to hear about Jesus.
Wasn't that such an awesome ministry video? One of the things that I wanted to always remind you guys is that it doesn't matter where you're at. You can always share the love of Jesus to anyone. You could be in the grocery store. You could be, you can go up to your neighbor that lives next door. You can share the love of Jesus with anyone at anywhere, place, and time. It doesn't have to always be somewhere overseas or somewhere in a different country. You can do it right in the city of Moore Park. So I encourage you guys to go out and make disciples and to share the love of Jesus with everyone and anyone you come in contact with. With that being said, I will catch you guys all next week for another Sunday school, and I will see you guys all later. Bye, kids.